So we're going to take a flashback into time. We're here to break down and also go over the basics of GOAT format. GOAT format lasted from, I think, June to August of 2005. Correct me if I'm wrong. Let's give or take a few months. You know, you had a lot of rulings going on. You had Exarion format. Shout out to Exarion Universe. You had the battle position rule being changed. But basically, in jumping straight into what all that format entailed, it thrived because instead of going ballistic with these long combos that we have in the modern game, it was extreme. It was an extreme test of card economy and timing. In addition, the old rules of drawing, you know, the card pool, the formats, the diversity, all this stuff really tied into what makes and what made and what makes still today, as it's still played, GOAT format so good. Of course, you had multiple different ways to play that format, and I think that the number during those formats of what was played with GOATs and the metamorphosis and so on and so forth with all the cards of the format, it was like 80 to 90%. So it won every Shonen Jump pretty much back then. Like I don't ever remember one of the jank decks ever winning, you know, the Cyberstein type stuff, but I think that was out of the picture by then. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, with the certain type of decks, we have GOAT Control, which is the version of the deck that was built around power, versatility, and timing. Timing is in all of GOAT format, where you basically have to understand what you're doing and how you're doing it and be able to plan accordingly. You also had alternative win conditions with certain win conditions like Exodia, Burn, Last Turn. You know, that was Joujin in Last Turn. You remember that. And then Empty Jar. Shout out to the Empty Jar days. And then lastly, you had Chaos, which was built really around Chaos Hunter. I could go on about BLS. You know, BLS is obviously the knockout punch, but Chaos Sorcerer was at 3, I believe. And it pretty much dominated that format because you had to know when to drop it and how to drop it. You also had the OTK style of play during that format, which was Benkai OTK, Dimension Fusion OTK, I think it was Rescue Cat OTK. I don't think I'm missing anything. I think that was pretty much all of those. So if you were to have tips on what exactly or how exactly would you teach someone to play GOATs, help somebody learn to play GOATs, and what can you do yourself to get better at GOATs? I'm not the professional, but I have so many close friends that play GOATs and are just far better than me. I have been playing since the game started. I stopped when Synchros came out and then came back. So I was a part of that format, and I do remember it very well. Not that it ever really existed, it's just kind of, you know, in theory. But in getting into the tips, we have timing, synergy, and learning when to do something. So like I said before, timing is everything, at least back then. Timing is still something in Yu-Gi-Oh, but it's more so in timing combos, whereas you had to time when to flip a certain card, when to set a certain card, and it was just more skill intensive, and it was more, you had to be more careful, I should say. You had to know exactly what cards had synergy with what cards, you know, whether it's Metamorphosis with a scapegoat token, you know, or, you know, so on and so forth. I could go on and on. But with the Tsukiyomi and the Thousand Eyes being the other one, you also had to understand, and putting that aside, is passiveness or passivity. You had to know when to be passive, when to set more than one, when your opponent, when you can read that they don't have Magician of Faith, so they can't get back the Heavy Storm that they used, so on and so forth. There's 1,000 different theories and 1,000 different cards to interact with each other, but it all comes back to timing, synergy, when to do something, and passivity. Next up, we had you had to invert your way of thinking, and it trains you how to interact. So what I mean is, when you had to interact with your opponent on a 1-by-1 basis versus the modern game. You had to know your opponent's deck. You know, you had to know if they were playing GOAT. You had to know if they were playing OTK format. You had to know if they were playing Exodia or Burn. And you had to know, you know, all of the chaos stuff. You had to know how to interact with them, how to read what they're doing, which helps you train in the regular game. And it still matters. GOAT format just teaches you better because it teaches you about the card economy and how to deal with disruption and deal with risk reward, knowing when your power play is going to work, when your power play is not going to work, so on and so forth. Lastly, I think tilting and mind gaming actually came from that format. I think if you play GOAT format, I think you should play it without Cyber Dragon. Clearly, I don't think anybody really does, but Cyber Dragon's not healthy for that, and it kind of takes away the purpose because the speed change is tremendous. You know, it was Fiend Mega Cyber up until a certain point, and then it was Cyber Dragon. Nobody plays Fiend Mega Cyber in any of these decks really, but I do remember that card being around back then. So you have to cut out Cyber Dragon. But tilting and mind gaming. Tilting and mind gaming. Tilting, you had to know when to, this is outside of the game itself, you have to know when, you know, to read weakness and make a push, when to sit back, you know, when to act like you're being passive but you're actually setting something up. You know, that was usually with the Dimension Fusion OTK and all that type of stuff. But mind gaming, you had to know when to set a card that you knew you could chain, or set a card where you knew that Heavy Storm wasn't going to just absolutely destroy you like it can if you're not ready for it. When to know that Exarion is coming, when to know that a flip effect is coming, so on and so forth. We're definitely going to have some scapegoat tournaments, some GOAT, I don't know why I keep saying scapegoat, GOAT format tournaments coming up in Kansas City. I think at Collector's Cash. Collector's Cash said they're down to host. But also at some of the YCSs. I was trying to, if Konami's not going to do it, which I think they should, there's so much money for them to have. You don't have to spend a whole lot of money. That's probably the primary thing why GOAT format is so popular. Yes, you can trick your deck out and make it as blinged out as possible, but you can also pick the deck up for like $20, $30 and be good. But I think it's healthy for teaching the game, teaching interaction, teaching how Yu-Gi-Oh was played and should be played, really, if we really want to be technical about it. I think if they don't do that, then the players as a whole should try to come together with a GOAT format tournament. Again, this is Greg Farley from The Wise Guys. I am not a GOAT format professional. We will have videos coming up on the page that will enlighten you, you know, hopefully give you some kind of perspective on that, as well as the 3 to 4 decks that were in that format being live and direct and on view. I almost said pay-per-view, but we will have some videos with GOAT format mixed in with the rest of the stuff of the modern game. But I appreciate you guys tuning in. This is Greg Farley from The Wise Guys signing out. Peace.